So we're once again going to talk about the next generation with the PlayStation 5, but we're more specifically going to be focusing on the potential PS5 exclusive games lineup. We know that Sony has a ton, and I mean a ton, of momentum going into next generation with the PlayStation 5. And even though it sounds like the PlayStation 5 is going to certainly be a worthy upgrade, it's going to be incredibly powerful, and it's going to be awesome, and we're going to see games look better on the PS5 than we've ever seen before in terms of consoles, that's not even the reason why people are so excited about the PlayStation 5. The real reason is the games, the potential sequels that we're going to get to just absolute masterpiece games we've gotten this generation with the PlayStation 4, but also maybe some other titles as well that some people may not be expecting that could certainly bring a new level of excitement for the PlayStation 5 and next generation. Now, we don't know what the launch lineup of the PS5 is going to look like. We don't know if it's going to be a little bit weaker, if it's going to be insanely strong. We really don't know, but we do know that Sony is going to deliver the games throughout next generation. This is something that they've committed to, and they've reassured us that it's going to happen. And all you have to do is just, look at some of the games again that we got this generation, and we know that it's going to be awesome. So, starting with this list, we're going to start with some of the more obvious ones, such as God of War 2, or sequel to God of War 2018. I feel as though this is a game that most of us already know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Now, I would argue that we can expect a game like God of War 2, and this applies to actually a few other games on this list as well. We can expect it sooner than I think some people might be thinking. And I say this because the foundation for a lot of these games is already laid out. And what I mean by that is a lot of these games are either new IPs or they're, in the case of God of War 2, kind of a revamp and just a redo, right? Just a kind of building things from the ground up. A lot of times these games take so long to create, especially new IPs, because these developers have to focus on laying the foundation, and that takes a long time. That takes probably more than half the development time up, and that's why some of these games can take up to 5 to 6 years before they end up releasing. But once that foundation is laid and they can focus on making sequels, they can now just kind of streamline the process, and it just makes it that much more easier for them to focus on getting certain games out the door in a more reasonable time frame, such as 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. And that's really important to pay attention to, because that plays a huge impact in how long we end up waiting for some of these games. So we have God of War 2. I think that that's a game that, honestly, it's going to make a lot of people upgrade to the PS5 because they're going to want to play the best version of it, and it's going to get them very excited. The big question, I think, with games like God of War 2 and pretty much every other game on this list is, depending on when they release, I think that that's going to ultimately determine whether or not it's a PS5 only exclusive versus if it's going to release on the PlayStation 5 as well as the PS4, because that could be a huge difference maker in getting people to upgrade to the PS5. And something tells me that Sony's going to want to be very strategic with this, with a lot of these games, because if you think about it, maybe saving a game like God of War 2 till later in the generation, when they're a couple years deep into the PS5's life cycle, and maybe they can justify making it a PS5 only title. Now, of course, Sony can choose to do this at any time, but again, it takes a lot of planning. Like, would it be smart to announce the PS5 and every exclusive game that's announced from that point forward is only on the PS5? No, that wouldn't be a smart thing to do, considering how many PS4s are out there in the wild in people's homes. But again, they do have to try to focus on selling this console. So I'm deviating a little bit. We know another one is going to be Horizon Zero Dawn 2, or a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. I think that this is another game that we know for sure is coming at some point. It's just hard to say when. This could be a game that launches alongside the PS5. This could be a game that maybe needs more development time than we think, because they want to make some significant improvements that will take longer to achieve, and it could end up coming maybe in the middle of the PS5's life cycle. But it's a game that we're for sure going to get, and that is going to do insanely well. That's another theme you're gonna find throughout most of these games, is you already know that a lot of these games, they're going to sell incredibly well, they're going to do well, and they're just going to it's going to make next generation absolutely awesome. Another one that we don't talk about too much, but is another Infamous game potentially. We know that Sucker Punch is, probably neck deep at this point in the development of Ghost of Tsushima, and it's hard to say if they would want to continue the Infamous series after Ghost of Tsushima. I don't think they would, simply because it looks like they're putting a lot into Ghost, and I think based off of how excited people are for this game, it's going to do really well. And it looks like they're kind of taking things to just a whole different direction. So maybe they could make like a second team, or maybe they could give the IP to a different team to work on. But I think that maybe there's a chance they'll want to do something more with Infamous. We're going to have to wait to see about that one. Something I think we are for sure going to see, though, next generation at some point, is a continuation of the Uncharted series in some way, shape, or form. I don't think it's going to be a reboot. I think that there's a good chance it could be called Uncharted 5, and if not, it's just going to be called Uncharted something. But I think it will end up starring Nathan Drake's daughter. We know he has a daughter. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't played Uncharted 4. But, he has a daughter, and this should be well known by everybody at this point. Even I know it. So I think that we're going to see a continuation of the Uncharted series with his daughter, potentially. And, maybe if not, maybe they will just do something completely new. Maybe it'll star his brother with Sully. Maybe they'll do something there. But I think for sure we are going to see Uncharted make a return sometime next generation. Another one that I think is fairly obvious is Spider-Man 2, a sequel to Insomniac's Spider-Man, which is easily one of the best games that has released on PlayStation 4 this generation. Maybe just one of the best games this generation. That could be said for a lot of these games we list off. But that's a game, again, the foundation is laid. Insomniac, as we speak, is probably working hard on the sequel, and I think it's just another game that if it ends up being a PS5 exclusive, it's going to sell a lot of PS5s. I think in particular with Spider-Man 2, that is a game they're going to make sure that they don't actually want to release on the PS4. They want to release it maybe later in the PS5's life cycle, simply because that the Spider-Man brand is going to push units more than anything else. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but another game, Days Gone 2, a sequel to Days Gone. We know, as we talked about, that Sony Bend is currently hiring for a new AAA project that they claim is for the PS4, but it could very well be for the PS5. I think it's kind of obvious it's for the PS5, simply because, they just released Days Gone this year, so whatever it is they're working on, it's certainly going to take more than a year of development time. And I've speculated it is a Days Gone 2. We know the game sold really well. We know the game has a ton of potential. Maybe it wasn't considered a masterpiece like some of these other games that have released, but it's definitely an above-average game in my opinion, and I think it certainly deserves a sequel, and I think that Sony's going to want to let Ben continue with the Days Gone universe. Another one that we could end up seeing is a potential sequel, or maybe just some type of new Ratchet & Clank game. Again, hard to say if Insomniac would be the one working on this. Maybe it would be. We know that these teams grow, and sometimes they separate, and they have one team work on another game. Or maybe it could be, a game that they're already working on that they're going to try to get out earlier in the PS5's life cycle before they start work on Spider-Man 2. Maybe it could be the other way around. Maybe we won't see a new Ratchet & Clank, but there's definitely potential there. It could happen. We know we're going to see Gran Turismo 7. We talked about that. We know that team, Polyphony Digital, is already working on a follow-up to Gran Turismo Sport, and they say it's pretty much going to be the biggest and best. It's going to be a culmination of everything they've done, and they really want to knock it out of the park. So that, I think, could end up certainly being a launch title for the PS5. I think that's the ideal situation. We have Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. Now we know Part 1 is going to be exclusive, at least a timed exclusive, and I know a lot of people don't consider it exclusive because of that, but believe me, I think it's worth considering how much hype is surrounding this game. I think it's worth noting that the Part 2 of this could end up being a timed exclusive as well, which would definitely help sell PS5s for sure, would definitely help Sony. And then we have The Last of Us Part 3. Now, I know this one's getting way ahead of ourselves here, but again, we have to understand that you look at the weight and the strength of the Last of Us brand. I think it's safe to say it's easily the most hyped game this generation. It's going to be the biggest game of this generation potentially when it launches next year. And the idea that Sony would want to continue that, whether it's with, I mean, we have to assume Naughty Dog would be the ones to do it, right? I think we're going to see something more with the Last of Us universe in some way, shape, or form. I don't necessarily know if it will be with Joel and Ellie. We could see another situation where we see like an updated or remastered, I guess if we can even call it that, version of The Last of Us Part 2 in the early days of the PS5, and then at the very end of the PS5's life cycle, whenever that is, maybe we see the next installment of something within The Last of Us' universe. I think that that's something that is definitely going to happen. I just don't see Sony letting go of The Last of Us universe after Part 2 and just saying, well, that's it, we're moving on. It just doesn't really make much sense. Now, this one is the one that I'm personally really holding out hope for. I really hope that we see something more with this, and that is a Bloodborne 2, or just something within the Bloodborne universe. It doesn't have to be a direct follow-up to Bloodborne. I mean, I don't even know how it could be. There's, the story's kind of self-contained, I guess, but there's also a lot of room within that universe for expansion and even more lore to be told. The game was so good, I really would be utterly shocked if next generation we don't see something more with the Bloodborne universe on PlayStation. That would be insane to me, and I really, really hope that more than anything we get something more with Bloodborne. I think it's very deserving of it, and I think that a lot of people would agree with me there. But moving on from that, we have another Killzone game. We know that Guerrilla Games, I think it was confirmed that they are building up another second studio to work on something else, most likely a continuation of the Killzone games. It's a known IP, and it is pretty popular, and it has done very well in the past, so it just makes sense that Sony would want to continue that while also, having... I don't know if it would be like the A team or the B team. Maybe the A team is working on Horizon Zero Dawn 2, while the B team is currently working on a new Killzone that Sony kind of wants to have close to the launch of the PS5. That would make a lot of sense, in my opinion. So I think we are certainly going to see a new Killzone next generation. And then we have Little Big Planet 4 from Media Molecule. Maybe that's going to happen. Something tells me it might actually happen because Dreams is kind of like a live service game, so they're going to want to continue to support that and update it, but it's kind of self-contained in that way, so I could see that their next project maybe being Little Big Planet 4, or maybe something completely new. But the final one here as well is something from Blue Point, that I think being a Demon's Souls remake. I think that could end up being a launch title for the PS5 as well, which would be very awesome. I think people would be very excited for that. But that's my list, guys. To go over it one more time, we have God of War 2, Horizon Zero Dawn 2, a new Infamous, Uncharted 5, or a continuation of Uncharted, Spider-Man 2, Days Gone 2, a new Ratchet & Clank, Gran Turismo 7, Final Fantasy 7 Remake Part 2, The Last of Us Part 3, Bloodborne 2, a new Killzone, and potentially Little Big Planet 4. Definitely a really stellar lineup of games there, and it really just goes to show that when people talk about their excitement for the PS5, why they're going to be there day one, upgrading to the PS5, all of these games we just listed, even if we just only get half of them, that's why. So yeah, that's going to do it for the video, guys. Let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. Be sure to tell me which game on this list you would be most excited for if it ends up happening. Leave the video a like if you did enjoy it and you enjoy the content. It really helps it out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.